I hope it's any more contagious than anything else. Just,
All right.
yeah.
But I'm doing that.
There's a lot of,
I'm just gonna say the same kind of thing that I said the other day.
Oh, about the town server, yeah.
Yeah.
I put a memo in it, so you really don't need to say a whole lot about it,
Okay,
because it's in the packet as a memo.
yeah, okay.
Um,
But I would like to.
Carol should be here. She's probably just running around.
We've got a minion. Recording. Hey. Here we are. Welcome to, it is 6:03.
Not even catching you, so you're gonna have to.
What am I gonna have to do?
So this isn't even catching you speak, so you're not speaking loudly enough.
Ah, how about now? Can you hear me now?
I can barely hear you.
Yeah. you're
Well,
gonna have to Speak up a lot.
All right. It is now 6:04 and we will start the select board meeting. I am Richard Hackle. Bob Ernest is away, so I will be conducting the meeting as vice chair. And Carol will be a little bit late. Okay, first item on the agenda is public comments for anything not on the agenda. Anybody have anything to say? Good, okay. Moving on to town reports. Vika.
All right, so just a couple of things on the town reports. As always, there are committee openings that we are looking for. Board of Adjustment Appeals needs a couple of volunteers, transfer station. There is newly open position on the planning board. And one of the more important ones is the finance committee, which was formed. Unless we get at least another applicant or two, that committee cannot begin to do their work to assist the board in the budget process. The next thing is, so the board, majority of the board, I believe, if not everyone, received, as well as myself, an email from JP Cog. It's something that they do with a welcome and a congratulations reception for newly elected members. I think because of the last couple of years, with the turnover, they sent it to everybody. I just would like an idea from the board who and how many people are choosing to go if they do, because if it's more than 3 people, then we need to advertise that publicly, or if it's gonna be 2 people, which I believe the 2 of you, Richard and Eliza, would be who it would be most relevant to, but I'm not sure whether other board members would be interested in attending it or not.
What is the date again?
December 11th.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Happy to go.
I would be interested in going as a new member.
So the emails that you received, you need to RSVP and sign up.
Okay, good.
So
May I ask a question about something you previously did? If someone is a non-resident, can they be on the finance board? Or is that
I'd have to
restricted
look at the, I don't remember the regulations off of the top of my head. If there is somebody that's interested, I would encourage them to go talk to me.
Okay, and my second question is, if someone is interested in serving on a board or committee, do they have to pick up the paperwork in person, or is the form available online to fill out?
There is somewhat of an outdated form on the town website. They
Okay.
can write that one in or fill that one out and provide it to us, send it to us, or they can come in and get it.
Sounds good, thank you.
As far as applicants, every board is slightly different about who they take on and what the requirements are. The finance committee specifically, I would have to double check because it was a little bit more
More requirements, yeah.
specific than others have
Yeah,
been.
got
Yep.
that, thank you.
I just got a message from Carol. She is on her way.
Okay.
New payroll system. So the town had historically had a company called Complete Payroll Solutions. They were, I think, more or less bought out by a company called iSolved. We have made attempts since about April to work with them as much as we possibly can. They have been a very difficult company to work with. We would submit things and think that they're accurate, and it was after it was finalized, we would find out some people had too many deductions or not enough deductions, or retirement or not retirement. So we chose to switch. So Bangor Payroll Company is the new company. We just completed the second payroll with them. And so majority of the people in the community are either employed with the town or volunteers, primarily on the fire and rescue. So for people that have received an email, random email from Bangor Payroll, and you've been involved in town one way or another, it's not a scam. It is something that we would encourage people to sign up for. Because we are going to transition to less of a paper and more of an electronic base. So if you're going to be looking for any of your tax forms or any of your bi-weekly pay stubs, you are going to have to go in there to get them. So we're no longer paying per envelope to have those shipped to us and then shipped to each employee. So
Great.
that is something that is fairly new.
And does that cover the school as well, or do they run that separately?
The school and all of the employees under the school are part, so the town office is the bookkeeping department, and the payroll department for the school and the town employees and
Okay,
volunteers.
That's good, thank you.
Election is coming up, November 5th, ballots, absentee ballots are available. And voting will be here 8 to 8 on Tuesday the 5th.
That's a cool. Oh,
Not
open. Thank you.
So those are the couple of things that I hadn't written up when I typed up the TA report. Since typing that up, there's just a couple of other things that I would like to add. One of them is the FEMA has come out to the island. They made kind of not a surprising trip, but it was a very quickly planned trip last Friday. We had acquired a new FEMA representative in the last couple of weeks, and the FEMA representative has been very helpful compared to the previous representative that we had. We submitted, it was a combination of 6 projects for damages. The costs are very much so varied from the initial submissions because there's a lot of information that's being put in that wasn't. But basically, with where things stand now, the town has a really good understanding with how to proceed, and more or less relative to areas like South Shore Drive and East Shore Drive. They did come back on Friday because there were some missed things relative to the stone pier. So when the stone pier, when we did the assessment of the structure after the storms, that's something that I was under the assumption was put in because it had been provided to FEMA. It was in fact missed. So they did come out. I think everything at this point has been captured. But moving forward, what we need to do is we have a general idea of what FEMA could reimburse us for some of these locations, based on the assessments that they did. And so, for example, South Shore Drive, at this point, what is important to remember is the money that is reimbursed to the town, if approved, is only to replace what was removed. So in a place like South Shore Drive, it's not to restabilize the entire structure, it's basically to replace what was removed. And so the rough estimate that we were provided with was a little over, right around $480,000 that they believe would be reimbursable to us. The big conversation that we had was, what can we do now and what can we proceed with that isn't going to have a negative impact when it comes to being reimbursable or when it comes to being able to do any future work. The feedback that we received is, with the locations such as South Shore Drive, and I'm using that as an example because South Shore Drive, East Shore Drive, and the Stone Pier were really the top three. South Shore Drive, more or less the most impactful and the most cost effective, making it in their terms a high priority, which I think most people would agree. But what the recommendation was, that at this point, the town should go out to bid and consult with some engineering firms that could give us an estimate on what would it cost to bring it back to pre-storm and what could it cost to improve and mitigate from future damages taking place. We would then need to provide that information to them, and from that information, they would be able to work with us and involve mitigation where mitigation might be able to match to close a similar amount. So this really brings us to the point of having the board support and us having some information and collecting some, writing up an RFQ, something along the lines of putting it out there so it's documented, so we're able to recruit some engineering firms that could give us some of those estimates that then we could use and provide them to FEMA. At the same time, we now have more information that we can really share with the residents who've been patiently waiting. And so I did reach out to their point of contact, and once bringing this to the board's attention in a public meeting, I wanted to follow up and actually have a full conversation with the two board members who played a role with those conversations. And so I know it wasn't an agenda item, but I felt that with how long this process has been taking and how much information I was able to learn leading up to the end of next week, that I felt that it was important to mention under the town administrator report, and hope that you support the process moving forward.
So this is an essential, to reiterate what you said, so you're talking about FEMA would essentially put back the dirt that fell down?
So
Dirt and rocks.
they logically understand that us putting them giving us, $400,000 to put back the dirt where it was is gonna be a waste of everyone's money. And so, but that's how their system works to estimate that. Knowing that and knowing that that's not something we want or can do, that's where mitigation steps in. But what they need from us are those quotes and those estimates from those firms that would tell us dollar amounts, and then they can provide a more concrete answer relative to. Right now, it's about $480,000 that FEMA would reimburse us if we were to spend it to put the dirt back. But if we were to do some kind of mitigation or work for whatever those next steps are, that could be matched.
So we could use that money for the mitigation.
Not necessarily, no. What we need to do right now is we really need to seek engineering services and engineering firms to give us some estimates on paper for bringing it back to pre-storm disaster and improvement. and then provide that information to FEMA and then work with them. Because the fine line here and the reason that this is moving so slow is we really don't have the funds as a community to do the repair. And so having a general idea of how much we can work with potentially with FEMA is gonna be helpful in knowing how to move forward. And more importantly, if we're able to tap into other resources available, because that's where FEMA sometimes is a little yeah, from what I've learned, it's been, difficult. If we do too much, then that might impact how much of their funds we could receive. I know that's a lot of information. It's really hard to wrap your mind around, and it's taken a lot for me to try to understand it.
That's good.
I really want to thank you for the amount of work it takes for you to work with FEMA. And it's really quite extensive. If it's determined that the present roads of East Shore, the South Shore can't be really brought back to stability, would any of that mitigation involve moving the road?
FEMA will play no part in moving the road.
They
So
won't.
that's very clearly been stated.
Okay,
And any of those discussions and conversations would have to go to town meeting appropriation and votes.
right,
So it's
Okay.
not a decision that could be very easily made by just a couple board members
Right.
or by the entire board. It's a more of a long-term discussion that would have to go back to a town meeting.
got it. Thank you.
Vika, do I understand correctly that the hazard mitigation funding process is separate from storm response?
Yes,
Right,
yes.
so we would have to go through this separate channel of hazard mitigation funding, right?
yes, and that's right now. Unofficially, they were able to say that with this roughly $480,000 that they've determined could be reimbursable, would be reimbursable from FEMA. They said that it could be matched up to that. But until we start the process and going through with the engineering firms and having that information to provide from them, and then mitigation, seeing the steps that we're taking, that money wouldn't be secured and or released to us. And all of this is, so when we had this meeting, FEMA was there, MEMA was there, and mitigation was there. And so FEMA will make the determination of how much funds could be approved for each individual project. It then goes through MEMA, who gives the town the funds.
And is it only available through matching?
No,
Okay,
no, it's two different things. It's just that was a rough estimate that they were able to
Gotcha.
give us, given us kind of a general ballpark of, because now that they've kind of provided those numbers, it's more or less, this is the money that you're going to get if you were to proceed. Because they've, the way she explained it, it's not secured funds, that's what would be expected. But we have to start that before we find out the mitigation number, so, which all of this, we should have known, many months ago. It's just that we got stuck in an unfortunate situation that delayed the process, and,
Yeah.
I was trying not to be aggressive and to be proper, but, I guess I could have been a little bit more aggressive.
but you're feeling confident with the people you're dealing
100%.
with?
It's
Oh,
day and
100,
night of a
that's wonderful.
difference. The
Okay.
information that we've gained and learned and what they've pushed us through in just a couple of weeks that we worked with them is
Okay.
100% improvement from what we had before.
Okay, thank you.
So if the board is okay with that, I would like to work. So David and Carol were the two people that had played a role with South Shore Drive residents. I would like to work with one or two of them if they're okay with them, and come up with some kind of RFP or proposals. Share it with you to make sure that you're okay with that, and then try to put those out rather than waiting over the next couple of meetings to have public discussions. It's not something that really requires your vote. I don't think in this case, But if you support with it, I would like to proceed with it, so then we can hopefully, get some momentum going, and have some better answers for the residents.
I know Carol's got a lot on her plate, so, I'll happily jump in and help as much as I can. Unless she really wants to join me.
Well, the select board did something like this 10 years ago, so I think we're gonna try to resurrect that process and improve it. But so we're gonna, I think Herb he found it eventually, so I think we can all work together and just communicate.
Yeah, I was gonna, kind of my way of tackling this, I was gonna look up old records of the few times that we did go through this process and reiterate similar language and then make sure that the board is okay with it before we proceed with anything.
What they did before is qualify a number, I don't know, 3 or 4 engineering firms. And so they just get their rates and what their capabilities are, and then from that list, they would pick for certain projects. And this is road, it's road repair, but it's coastal road repair, so it's a little bit
Complicated.
specialized.
So if the board doesn't have any other questions, or if the public doesn't have any other question, that wraps up the TA report. There is a permit list that was provided by the code enforcement officer for the September permits. I am waiting on a monthly report from him, and now that we have kind of handles around the system, we are trying to figure out how to have this be more readily available and accessible to the residents, so they're not having to look through random reports through the select board to access the information.
Good.
So that's all I have.
Okay, any other comments? All right, on to regular business. Number 24-096, to discuss the fire department radio upgrade and to take any necessary action. Where do we start?
So there is a brief little memo in here, and I did ask Ralph to come and kind of explain. There's been several different fire department radio upgrade projects going on. We did recently receive a bill for some radio upgrades and replacements that was not within the anticipated budget, so I will need a motion to authorize the expenditure of that, but I asked Ralph to come to either answer some questions or give you a general update, because some of you came into this halfway through the second or third project being complete. Well, there were a couple of other ones that had been started, so I thought maybe having him here would be helpful to kind of give you an overall of what's going on at the fire department.
Do you want the motion now or later?
It's
So we hear
up
from
to you,
Ralph
I
first?
say.
Okay,
Let's hear from Ralph.
Okay, Rob.
So there's 3 separate, but obviously overlapping projects. The first one we talked about was, actually got a quote from RCM Radio Communications Management Company, who does a lot of radio work, back on 2/13/23. That was to upgrade our radios, our radio system. That was the first step. That's in conjunction with Long Island, because we share a radio frequency with them. It saves us quite a bit of money. We need to upgrade our radios because we have, as some of us know, the radios go down quite frequently. I stopped keeping track. It happens quite a bit. We had a delay in a call to the Sheboygan this year for an alarm sounding by 45 minutes because our radios went down. And when our radios go down, we don't have any way to communicate with dispatch, and they don't have any way to communicate with us. This is our means of getting communication from them. And we also receive a text message. We don't have the ability to change channels or anything because that is it. So we decided to do that. The board voted on it, set the money aside. That was $40,248.73. That would be our portion, Long Island pays half. Then, so that's been put on hold, or I decided I wanted to put that on hold because Cumberland and Yarmouth came in and said, hey, we wanna, put a building here and put radio equipment there and use our site. So that's what we've been dealing with lately. Everybody knows about that. That's gonna save us quite a lot, you know, it's in the, like, I can't remember, like $10,000 or more. But it's been on hold for a long time and we need to move forward with that. That's why the little building's showing up, I think Friday. Mo's been doing some site work, so we can hopefully move forward with that. The one that Vika just spoke about was a separate upgrade, and that was, we had no way around it. That was, our dispatch center, Cumberland County Communications Center, who dispatches for us, law, and probably 15 other departments. They are changing their system and we had to change our radios. So all the radios that are in the trucks, the handheld ones that we carry, we had to get all new ones. We were able to get a grant. I got a grant through dispatch, and I can't remember the number, but that paid for by far the majority of all the radios and everything. It didn't cover, I think, 3 or 4 radios, and it didn't cover the installation of the radios. So they had to come over and change the radios out in all the trucks. So that is, you know how much that was?
So what I received was the invoice of what we have to pay,
Yeah.
which Beth provided me, and that's a little over, it was 10,500. 10,57785.
That was the remainder. So that's it in a nutshell. So there's 3 different projects going on that all kind of work together separately. And Long Island's definitely anxious. They've been very patient. Yes, we have to do that upgrade at the same time. So when we put it on hold, we put Long Island's on hold as well. But so I would, as soon as we get that little building in and get the power to it, we can start to move forward with that.
The building is arriving on Friday. The electrician, so part of this, the entire fire department building had to be upgraded to a 400 amp service, which had its own delays. So that has been done. We're running on 400 amp at this point. The electrician is going to be coming back next week to do the connection between the fire department building and the shed that's going to be arriving. And then after that, the next steps of kind of making it a full
Then
circle
I-
where you're really gonna
Then I
take
see
over.
it can come over, and I've been trying to coordinate with them, and it's kind of difficult because the person that is in charge is retiring, and he's also on vacation right now, so I'm trying to coordinate them coming over just as quickly as we can, so we can move forward with that, because they have to install the battery backup system and all that, and that's part of what Cumberland's paying for, so we gotta get that installed, so we can put our equipment in there and upgrade it, and then they can do Long Island at the same time, and then do a little more reprogramming, and then we're good to go.
Ralph, what is the size of the building that's going up?
I think it's 8 by 12.
And all of this will fit in there?
Yeah, this, I mean.
Explain where it is now.
Our radio equipment right now is in it, it's in the.
The closet.
room closet,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
And there'll actually be, we'll be able to remove some of the stuff. Don't ask me to get into the details of it because the radio system was way more complicated than I thought it would have to be. But they'll be able to remove some of the pieces because of the upgrade. There'll be a couple of redundancies in there for us in Long Island. It will be a much better, by what they explained to me, a much better system, much more dependable system. And down the road, right now, when we Kia mic, our radio goes from Kia to our tower, then to Back Bay Towers, and then to Cumberland County Dispatch. When this is all said and done, somewhere down the road, we'll be able to cut out Back Bay Towers. So that will be a huge plus, because we've lost our radios a couple of times because they lost power and we don't have a backup system there for whatever reason. So it's gonna take a little time, but this initial upgrade that we're trying to push through should make our radios way more dependable.
So,
I was just wondering, is there any market for used radios, or can they be used for backup, or?
So the radios, we got them on a grant, so they need to take the radios back.
Okay,
So, and there were, yeah, there's not any really worth to them.
That's years technology. Yeah. And anything else? No. Go.
So I think we originally approved $40-something thousand, so now this is an additional tens for a total of 50
So,
odd.
yeah,
Right,
so-
so I guess my question is, what's the balance in the reserve account? Is there plenty of money in there?
So the reserve account is. I can't remember.
so when you say the reserve account isn't the account that we set the money aside for the initial upgrade?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so somehow we're gonna have to come up with that and on top of what we're talking about right now.
on top of the 10.
I can't.
Well, that's what we need to understand. So our job is to make sure we have money wherever we're appropriating it from. So that's my question.
Yeah, mine too.
No, there is money in there. Fire department. So the fire department reserve account, 9025. That reserve account, not last year's budget, not this fiscal 25, but fiscal year 24 is, money was appropriated, and I can pull up, the exact town warrant. Of course, I have the wrong one with me. Money was put into that reserve account for that
Right,
upgrade.
right.
This particular reserve account for the last couple of years, which I could be wrong, but I think when I started the town administrator, I started working with Ralph, and $50,000 was put in there the first year or two to set aside for a fire department, a new fire department truck
Okay,
in a few years. And so that particular year, less money was appropriated for the fire truck to cover the costs for that. And so in the reserve account, there is that for that particular thing. What there is no, there is no money in the expense budget to cover the full cost of this $10,000. And so when I wrote this out, Ralph and I hadn't fully communicated and figured out up to how much would need to come out of the reserve account. And so the motion says up to $10,000, which
I see.
it would come out of that account.
It's a little over.
There is over, $100,000, so there is some money, but granted, yes, there has been money set aside for a fire truck. After talking to him, there is money in the current expense budget that has been pretty much used up due to some of these upgrades. And so I didn't feel like it was, the wisest choice to use up all of that money specifically for this particular bill, where there are routine maintenances throughout the year happening. And so what I didn't want to do is use up and cover this entire bill and then have to come to you for a couple $100 here and there throughout the year. And so in talking to him, I believe you suggested $7,000, I think. We've communicated an email, and I believe it's up to $7,000 that we would, pull out of the reserve account to cover for this. And then that would leave around $2,000 for those other routine expenses coming through, through the year. I had put up to 10 because I didn't know what number we were going to be working with, and 10 would be the maximum to cover this bill, but it wouldn't be the full amount.
So even though this bill is 10,600,
Yes,
you're saying there's money, some money in there. You're just trying to cover the difference, okay?
Yes,
So
what we're trying to avoid is not overexpend the expense account
Got it.
and then have to.
Yep.
And just try to kind of logically, because this is a completely unexpected expense that we did not budget.
Yep.
And so, trying to play it both ways a
And
little bit.
this is an okay, allocation out of that, whatever the account is, 90-25 radios fall under that as a,
Oh, so yeah, the fire department reserve account is very general.
okay, that's all I need to, yeah.
Capital maintenance and replacement of, the fire trucks, associated firefighting rescue equipment and communication equipment and structures. So very, very general, covers it all.
All right,
Then I guess I'd be happy to make a motion.
make them.
I make a motion to authorize the town administrator to pay Radio Communications Inc. for radio replacement from the reserve 90-25 fire department account, not to exceed $10,000.
Second, David, second. Any more discussion? Ready to vote? Any comments? Yes,
Is there like expectancy of the new system?
forever.
That's a great question. I don't have a good answer for that. I could make up a number, but, I've asked that question and, I get honestly, like a 15-minute answer. It's tough. It all depends on how much you use it. Radios wear out, which I wasn't really aware of, how much they wear out depending on the usage.
David,
Just a quick, point of order, people who are addressing us from the stadium here, step up to the mic or folks.
I forgot, I failed to mention this, we're trying a new system.
Oh,
Yes. But it seems like if people in the first row, which includes these two tables, are within the audio pickup of our new high band broadband system, which we've got higher definition.
We're
So-
seeing if broadband is having an impact on how well it's picking things up, so trial and error here.
and Chip, the expert, is here, fine tuning it.
Yeah, the expert,
So
yeah.
if you want to speak from the back, you gotta move. Okay, thank you, David, for bringing that up.
thank you for the improvements.
Yeah, we hope this is another case report story from the event on Sunday. This should improve our meetings. Okay, ready to vote?
Yeah, you guys.
All in favor? Great, all
Unless you.
unanimous?
No.
Pass.
We need to.
Yeah, keep up the good work
Thanks, Ralph.
Thanks, Ralph.
so much.
I followed him around all day long.
All right. Moving on, item 24-097, to discuss the appointment of Tom Lister and Ben McDougal as LPI and CEO assistants to Town Code Enforcement Officer and to take any necessary action.
So this is, this is something that is, as a suggestion of the current code enforcement officer. And this is very specific to Hope Island. So Hope Island is having a large amount of work done. The current code enforcement officer, we did spend, several hours out there a few months back. There's a lot of back and forth. It's sucking up a lot of his time and it's making it difficult for him to give time to other people in the community. But also, we want to make sure that we are staying completely on top of any and whatever work is taking place out there, because it is a lot more difficult to be current with everything that's going on. It's not one building, it's several buildings happening at the same time, so they really need constant ongoing communication and inspection. And so the town code enforcement officer has recommended these two individuals So Tom is a current CEO in Topsom with 20+ years of experience. Ben is in Cape Elizabeth with 15+ years experience. He selected the code enforcement officers that he felt would be the appropriate people that could step in on his behalf. What this would do is when Knickerbocker, which is the company that Hope Island is using, needs an inspection, any kind of communication, things like that, they would go through them. These gentlemen would make the trips to Hope Island at Long Island expense. So Shebig will not be covering their hourly rate. Shebig will not be covering their cost of travel. Hope Island will be covering this cost because it's more convenient to them to have somebody direct that they can pay hundreds of dollars to do this. So at the end of the day, our code enforcement officer gets the final say in all of it. And so today, I was CC'd on an email from Hope Island, trying to engage the communication or these gentlemen, you know, they're trying to all figure out how to communicate if this were to get through, send in lots of photos, trying to set up an inspection and things like this. So, this appointment would be very specific to Hope Island. It would, I think it's something that's been discussed or talked about in the past, but I think that it's really the best case scenario for the island to, be on top of all the work that's happening there at no additional cost to the town and still have the town code enforcement officer be in communication with the people that he has suggested to step in on his behalf.
It's good. I mean,
So these people would basically be assigned to Hope Island and Hope Island only?
So they would be, once the appointment is made, they would be kind of an assistant to the town code enforcement officer, so that would cover them being able to do other areas, but I think in, Paul talking to them, the idea was that this would be for Hope Island to alleviate any, you know, any time that Paul would have to go out there and visit and things like that.
When the code enforcement people went out there, when you went out there, were there surprises? It just seems like there's always things being built out there.
So the code enforcement officer and the tax assessor and myself went out there. There were some, surprises, yes. Paul had discovered a couple of things that, they had started that didn't have permits. They have since you know, provided that information. There were also surprises in terms of, they were being assessed for things that weren't there or for a full basement, a full finished basement in the main house, which clearly wasn't. So it was, I think at this point, especially with the turnover of code enforcement officers and, the owners, it was an opportunity for the most thorough, if not the most thorough, visit that we've had since we've become a town, where they were able to document and measure every building, go through everything and figure out what is gonna be removed, what's gonna be coming in, to really, allow the resident to have an understanding of what they're being assessed for, but then also that the assessments were fair for the town and for the tax.
And when this was going on, the representative from the Knickerbocker group was present,
The taxpayer was present.
the taxpayer.
Oh, yeah, he was there.
Awesome.
And his
Thank you.
taxes did not go down.
Yes.
So, Vika, what's the plan with transportation? Did they work that out through?
So transportation, that was one of my biggest questions. So I asked, when this came to me, I asked Paul to write up an email And so, based on that email, I asked several follow-up questions. Transportation, hourly cost is all covered by Hope Island. So they will, Knickerbocker will communicate with these two code enforcement officers. They will pay for them to be transported to Hope Island. They will pay hourly rate for them to do what they need to do. Those code enforcement officers will follow up with Paul, who will yay or nay their decision. And then, that's kind of how that would be handled.
So you need, and what do you need from the board then? We actually have
Yeah,
to
what do you-
technically
So,
appoint them?
a motion to appoint these
Oh.
two individual, as, licensed plumber inspector and, code enforcement officer.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Tom Lister as and Ben McDougal as the licensed plumbing inspector and code enforcement assistants to our town and code enforcement officer.
Seconds.
Second.
Liza seconds. Any discussion?
Well, and I guess, do we need we don't add a condition that this is for Hope Island?
You can if you want to.
I kind of would
but-
like to, if that's
Okay,
okay, if I
that's
can
fine.
amend the motion, for work on Hope Island.
Any further discussion? Done. Please, I'm halfway.
Put the X up.
No, but now we're getting standing. So,
So I have a question. My question is the finances for this going through the town office? So for example, will they be paid through the town office?
No,
No, they're called.
no, Hope Island is covering the cost of transportation and whatever hourly rate
But
is
they're-
code
so it's
enforcement
not-
officer.
So I guess it's kind of like a slippery slope because it seems as if they're paying them but they're really working for us. It seems to me like it would be clearer if they reimburse the town or something, because what control do we have over these guys who are just they're basically working for them.
No, so they still have to follow every protocol that this code enforcement officer would. What happens is when an inspection is needed, Hope Island would cover the travel cost and the hourly rate for them to go out there at Hope Island's convenience. Well, these guys also work full time, so this would be a Friday gig for them to make extra money, basically. And then once they did the inspection, they would report to the town code enforcement officer, who would ultimately have the,
So Hope Island's actually paying payroll to these guys?
They're like consultants or
they're
independent
contractors.
contractors.
They're contracted to them?
And it's called the third party inspector, and
Yes,
it's
it's-
commonly
And do you have
used.
a written agreement with Hope Island about this?
No,
It's something that our code enforcement officer looked into and contacted the state, and this is how it could legally be done, is through a third party. The code enforcement officer, as long as appointed by the board, can have a third party inspector that they can have working under them that could do these kind of inspections and then report to the code enforcement officer.
so I guess if I can add, I think it's beneficial to both Hope Island and to the town, because we cannot provide.
Oh, no, I agree with you. I think
Yeah.
it is. I just want to cover us in case it's a problem, going back, that we have some kind of a paper, something in writing from Hope Island or whatever. that-
Their contractual arrangement will be with Hope Island, the two individuals.
Yes,
But the
But I
code,
think-
but the any certificates or permits will be issued by our code enforcement officer.
Right, but I
So
guess I'm just thinking that there should be some letter of understanding between Hope Island and the town. Just in the off chance that something went wrong.
I don't think that's typically done in these arrangements. I mean, they're done all the time, and I don't think that's typically how it's done. I mean, I think Paul picked the individuals because he thinks they're qualified. And basically Hope pays for the convenience of having more available inspection and services. And so frankly, for the town, it means there'll be more eyes on the ground than we've been able to.
No, I
provide.
understand that.
But I don't think typically there's any kind of agreement between the town and, you know, Hope Island or some other party. It's not how it's usually arranged. But I mean, we can
Okay.
talk to
No,
Paul,
I'm just raising it.
we can talk to Paul and see, but I think that this is kind of the normal approach.
It's just all the hours of litigation with Hope Island. I know it's a different owner. You know,
Oh, yeah,
That's-
no,
that's my
I
only-
understand.
that's my only, that where I'm
So
coming from.
I think that's a fair question and we can ask Paul that, you know, to
Yeah,
make sure.
I think there's nothing that would preclude Paul from asking for an inspection to happen. And their Hope will have to pay for it at Paul's beckoning, so that creates I think a logical direction for.
Right, but
Who's paying for it?
there's nothing in writing that Hope Island has said they're gonna pay.
Oh,
That's my point.
Oh, well,
It
hopefully we
is,
get-
it is with those two parties, those two
With those-
individuals
yes.
Okay, so-
have,
So
have a
he will have an
contract.
agreement with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, all right.
Good.
Yeah,
All right,
so somebody's got something, okay, as long as somebody's got something in writing, cause
Yeah, there's a contract between the two.
And so the anticipated cost is, they would work through, the town code enforcement officer as deputy officers under building and plumbing, disciplines. They would be reporting to us. So they are the point of contact and they report to, Paul, and Paul has the final say of whether a permit is or isn't issued. Hope Island is anticipated to be paying about $300 for each inspection. So it's at their convenience, they will pay $300 to have them come out versus waiting.
no, I
Once or
understand,
twice.
I'm just talking about having a paper trail, that's all.
all right.
Yep.
Any further discussion? We ready?
Good point, Jonah.
Yeah, excellent point.
Thank
I
you.
was thinking. Okay, for a vote, all those in favor? All, unanimous. Moving on. 24-098, here a brief update on the recent town survey about priorities and discuss plans for a future workshop.
So, it wasn't until after this was posted, instead of workshop, it was the future steps. I never corrected it because the board hasn't officially discussed what the future steps were gonna be.
Correct.
And, so that was my mistake for not making that correction and kind of making that assumption. There is a brief memo in the TA report. And so
There
the
is?
whole purpose of having this on the agenda is to really let the public know and to acknowledge that a survey went out, results were collected. Last week, the board, through guidance of the executive director of JP had a very successful retreat where this information was discussed. The board's priorities were discussed, figured out what the steps moving forward could be. And so really the common theme was the agreement that stone wharf is an important immediate and long-term repair. Barging remains to be a concern. So a lot of the similar relative issues that have been ongoing and coming up throughout several months and if not many years. We are waiting on kind of a final report from Christina to come to us with all of the notes. At which point the board would provide their feedback on whether they felt like she captured that or not. Once that information is in front of the board, it will then be an agenda item where there could be a more thorough discussion about what the outcome was of that particular workshop with the board and how the survey results played a role or how they varied in some cases, from, the board's, thoughts. So this was more or less really kind of to let the public know that, we know this was recent. These are the steps that have taken, these are the steps to really look forward, in the future agenda items for a more thorough discussion with a lot of more information present in front of everybody.
May I, oh.
Maybe you're gonna, well, if you have some things you're gonna say to start
Well,
with.
you go first.
Well, my question is, for the public, you know, what is available to them from the survey, or what is or will be available for them? Is there a summary or anything?
There's a summary, but I think it's not ready for release yet, because I think we want to take a look at what the minutes come through with the JP Cog day that we spent. Also, I like there were over 3,000 cells of information in the survey. And what was really clear is how much community input we have. So I think the best way to present this is to have a presentation to the community about it, to make sure that it's full and accurate. And I also want to add that having that day with all of us together and looking at these results and looking at our own views as select board committee members, it was very productive. I think that we can all agree with that. So without.
But I guess what I was thinking, the survey is sort of separate from what the select board decided to prioritize or what we evolved into. So will there be just a survey report to the community ultimately that reflects just the results of that?
Yes,
Okay.
but I see that happening when we're ready for
Yeah.
the full rollout. Yes,
That's fine.
but we had 140 people who completed the survey, which is a very good sample size. And,
The one thing that I recall from the, discussion about what to do with this, is there was some consensus from the board to put the results available for people to look at online. I think the tricky part with that is there was some sensitive information in some of those answers, and so needed to kind of siphon that out and make sure that any personnel related issues or issues that were really directed towards an individual that could be identified easily, those would really need to be gone through and removed before that stuff is available, and that's something that we have not had a chance to do that.
okay, well, yes. There's so much information, but if people are talking about a summary versus having the public have access to all of the data, those are two different things. Are you talking about the public having access to all of the
Well,
data with some redactions?
I think, if I recollect, I think that is what the select board sort of agreed to, is that's what Pete just said.
All right,
Yeah.
good. All right, let's start with acting.
Well, yeah, and I think, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I mean, but I think at the end of the meeting, that was kind of where we ended up.
Donna,
I think it was great that you guys did a survey. I think it's really important. I would suggest that the next time you do it differently. For example, the church just did one and you couldn't take it more than once. This one, you could have taken it 20 times if you wanted to. I'm not the brightest bulb in the pack. Richard knows my technology. But I just, for the fun of it, tried it. And I did it, all I put was my demographics in the second and third time I did it. And just to see what would happen, I probably could have done 25 if I wanted to. Not that anybody's done that, but I just think it's that kind of thing, it's the methodology. And I've talked to Eliza about this. The report out halfway through the survey, I don't think we should do that in the future. There's just some things that I think it's a great thing to do, to find out what people want. And I think it really is important to look at their comments, but I definitely believe that things need to be redacted.
Right. Donna, I went through the timestamps of when submissions were made, and I didn't see any patterns that looked like
Yeah, I'm saying,
repetitive.
I'm not saying
No, I
they
know.
could, that.
You are
anybody did it.
absolutely right, and
You know,
I,
I'm just,
yeah.
you know, just so at the end, nobody has questions, that's
Right.
my.
I've looked into doing, one on Survey Monkey, which has the
That's what
types
the
of,
church did.
right, and I've spoken with the church to see if we could use their account. It doesn't look possible because they already have 2 users on it and wanna keep it that way, so we wanna do a survey again on another topic here in the community, so it's 30 a month to do it through Survey Monkey. We could just do 1 month, but I think that you're right, we'll look at doing it a different format with Survey Monkey.
The feedback from this survey has an impact on the survey that we were planning to kind of roll out at this time relative to transfer station and getting people's feedback. And so that survey had caused a pause to make sure that any following surveys that we do don't have the same issues that this one experienced. So
I mean,
we're
it was
definitely
just,
taking that into consideration.
Yep, we got it.
and not checking, not, you know, checking in the middle of it, you know, but because, well, we know what happened there, but.
But when I look at the results of the first portion of the survey and after, there wasn't a significant difference in
No, I
response.
just meant about, like,
I
when I
understand.
took it and pushed the button and got all the pie charts and all the comments.
Yeah.
And I read a few comments and I stopped because it made me sad.
Yeah.
You know, that's not your fault, but I mean, people wrote, you know. And I guess you want them to be honest about how they feel, but I think people could be honest and be a little kinder.
Okay, yeah.
Agreed.
David,
We used to have an account during COVID on Survey Monkey, whether that's still active or not, I don't know.
It's not.
Okay.
It's been a couple of years since it's been active.
further, that,
I just want to thank Eliza for taking the initiative to put it together
Yeah.
and to get it going and to have it inform our meeting because it was really helpful. So, and thank you for doing that.
you're here. Great, thank you, Elias.
You will.
Moving on. 24-099, to discuss proposed transfer station changes and take any necessary action.
So this agenda item was as a result to, the TA report and a memo that I put in there, around the transfer station and more or less specific to the brush dump. And so the purpose of this particular agenda item is, to hopefully gain the board support in closing the brush dump from the public work side specifically, and only have it be open through the transfer station side during the operating business hours of the transfer station. This is something that is in the policy. It's something that the doors were open many years ago and we just haven't been able to close them. And so with all of the issues that we've experienced this year, particularly with the trash, with the mess, with the kids riding bikes in there, I really think it's time. I think, you know, the people working at the transfer station, are willing to take on that task and agree with me. And so I hope that the board could really support us in doing that. The ordinance also, the policy, is specific in the sense that the town does have the ability to work individually with commercial businesses if we wanted to. And so I think if we were to close it right now, we can kind of just, you know, go through the process and see what kind of concerns or issues it could bring to us and then tackle them as they come. But I think it's becoming too much of a liability to just have it be open at any point. And then, relative to a survey, Jeff had worked on providing, the the public with some general questions about, the transfer station in terms of what the improvements could be like. Should we charge for brush dump, things like that? Eliza is, volunteered herself to take on to put that survey, together. And so, once we have that ready, we can, make sure that the board has an eye on, I think it was what, like 10, 12 questions, very
13.
13, something like that. Not as much of an opportunity for people to provide, their,
Opinion.
unlimited opinion like the previous survey did, but more or less of, do you want commercial businesses to be charged to download the brush? Yes or no? Really, just really to hone in on, what kind of changes the community supports in line with some of the improvements that, Jeff is working towards at the transfer station. So I'll leave it at that. If you have any questions, and, an opportunity for Jeff to provide a little information about some of the things that he's been kind of, digging up.
Jeff, yeah, do you wanna just, do you have anything to say about this?
David had brought up last meeting about signage, so closure at the public works side would have a sign, brush dump, access through transfer station during operating hours.
Mhm.
Boom, so anybody sees that, have to go around. Signage at the transfer station side, brush dump, brush, leaves, grass, wood less than 6 inches in diameter. Wood, 6 inches to 28 inches in diameter, 8-foot maximum length, no stumps. Plain and simple, easy access. As far as reviewing what other towns do with brush dump, we are the only one that has free access.
Yeah.
What do you,
Most people don't even accept wood, it's only brush. Yarmouth is $15 for a pickup truck. Cumberland, you have to pay per trip or get a day pass or an annual pass. Falmouth, commercial, $10 for a pickup truck full. Long Island, $14 per a cubic yard. So we're behind the 8 ball in recouping costs to operate the brush dump as far as the town goes. I know we'll get grief from it from commercial users, people that come and want to use it on the weekends and they come in early. My whole thing was a safety issue. You know, there's no cell phone reception in the brush dump area. Guys go in there and cut wood, they slip, chainsaw goes to their leg, the log rolls over on their foot. It's off hours, it's a town-owned property. Huge risk factor. So access through the transfer station, people will adjust, everybody adjusts. I think it's just a wise move for the town to take.
is it gonna be on it's Littlefield Road, right?
Pardon?
On the other side, is there gonna just be signage or a fence that physically keeps
So-
people out?
The fence closes currently that was installed by Jamie, the chip guy, closes to within approximately 5-foot gap. We're ready to put a kryptonite cable across of it,
Huh.
and then that brush dump sign would go on a tire right in front of that 5-foot gap. So it will prevent any vehicle from entering the brush dump.
Any discussion? Yeah.
So how would you recommend we notify people?
So it's already in the ordinance, but we gotta go back
Right,
and
but
change some
it's-
history. I think once the sign comes in, it's gonna be ugly at first start. I've previously spoken with the 5 major players for commercial use. And I can easily do that again, putting it on the town website as a notification. Not everybody reads that.
So do you have a date where you think it might, I mean, it seems like we could make it effective at a certain
Tomorrow.
date. And give, well, I know, but I mean, that's the question, is that's partly my question.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so,
First.
when we advertised that the brush dump was gonna be closing and shipping, and at least through that
Yeah.
date, I never put anything back out,
Yeah.
hey, it's open again, and that was intentional.
Yeah.
And so we have had a couple of people ask, and, kind of what I left with the office, respond with, this will be a discussion at this board meeting until further notice, is really kind of how I've played, that to just not give a direct answer one way or another, but, I think most of the people are aware that a change is brewing. What or when, is yet to be determined. I mean, we could make it effective immediately, and it's gonna make people really upset. The hesitation that I have with saying, effective November first is, like with a lot of cases, people are gonna take advantage of the time frame between now and then and just unload and, pack the place up. And so kind of, how do you find,
Well, we're not-
something in between?
We're not prohibiting access, we're
Correct.
just limiting
Yeah.
it. So to
Sure.
me, I think we say, I guess that was the gist of my question, if we wanna say effective immediately, I think we should make it clear and notify people
And-
and.
The liability issue is a great one to hone in on, because that's huge for us. If something were to happen there.
There was
with it
a
open
period,
willy-nilly.
It's
I think we operated that way initially, right?
the brush dump,
Initially, you didn't have,
the brush dump was, that gate was always up. It was during the time that Marjorie was the town administrator that for some reason, I don't remember the history behind it, but the gates opened and then she could never get
Right.
them to close again because there was such a pushback. And so, my first year as a TA, when we made the changes to the ordinance and put in dimensions, the language about operating within business hours was at that time put in the policy. There was some pushback from commercial, individuals, so it made everything stop. What really brought this back up was Jeff stepping into the position more permanently and, having people, really not use it the proper way by having other things mixed in, causing more issues for the grinders. But really, to me, was when Jeff told me that there were tire tracks and we already have an issue around this island, and I've had to contact Cumberland County Sheriff's Department about underage kids on two-wheel vehicles going very fast on this island. And I was concerned that with all of the issues, he said that an accident would happen, not just the town road, but in the brush dump that's open to the public whenever it possibly can be.
Yeah, good.
so I mean, I think it sounds like the sentiment is to make it effective. Continue to make it effective and essentially immediately, but I do think we have to formally notify people as many ways as we can. I don't know what the proper protocol is, and I appreciate that you've kind of communicated with, the players, but I think typically, if I'm right, if people have problems, they should go to the town administrator, and that isn't really your problem to deal with, and that's, because I think if we don't wanna put you in a spot where you're trying to, solve people are gonna complain, we all know that, so I think the, questions about the dump or the brush dump should go to Lika.
It's often easier for people to complain to other town employees and to provide feedback than it is to come to the person who's supposed to received the official complaints.
Right, so I think maybe we need an official notice that basically says that, you know, effective immediately due to safety concerns, due to, you know, overabundance of material, blah, blah, blah. You know, and it's not closed, it's just, you know, access to the dump will be
Yeah.
restricted to the open hours of the transfer station through the transfer station. And if you have any questions, direct them to the town administrator, but I personally, I'd send out a postcard to every house on the island. I would, you know, put it on the town I don't look at the town website, so like, you know, I wouldn't see it on the town website, but I would just kind of let everybody know at the same time, and you send out a text message, whatever.
Text, Facebook.
But kind of do it all at once, and then, yeah, somebody's gonna be upset, but it's, and I kind of don't feel like, you know, Jeff, I really appreciate it that you're working with people but I also think it's not, you know, not your responsibility to handle complaints.
David, then Donna.
Well, it's a matter of public safety, and I think we certainly have the powers to do what we need to do to keep those, restaurant and the whole operation safe for the public. And, you know, for example, when there's a funeral, we don't put out a notice that the transfer station is gonna be closed during the hours of such and so. We just do it, and I think we should.
Do we do that? Put out notice?
We haven't done.
Put up a notice.
Well, I never got one. I've been turned down a couple times. But no, in this case, I think it's a matter of public safety and immediate action is warranted and called for.
Go ahead, then, yeah.
So we're only talking about having the access be through the transfer station.
During the transfer.
During
station
transfer station
business
hours.
Yes.
And when it comes to, at some point, looking at fees for what is brought to the brush dump, do we have a timeline for that, or does the?
So I think in this case, we just kind of take it one step at a time. Jeff and I have been, meeting on a fairly regular basis. So usually we check in, every week we check in, every couple of weeks, we seem to be sitting down for a more thorough discussion. And so I think if the board supports this, we will kind of tackle this, handle this, let this, you know, be an adjustment to people, and then throw another curveball.
Okay,
I think we were gonna wait on the results of our survey
Yes.
before the
Yeah, yeah.
next steps were then taken.
Yeah.
okay.
That makes sense.
I do, so I have the questions that you've written up for the survey. I always think a good survey educates. So when we're talking about how much it costs to chip the wood, how much we anticipate it will be next year, maybe some information about fees that are paid in communities that are similar to ours. That would be good information. That would be a good time to educate the public about it. So, when we're asking the public, would you support fees for dumping brush or wood? Letting people know at that time that these are the costs that are in similar communities. So when you talk about Yarmouth and Cumberland and Long Island, that would be the time to educate people about it. So when they're making educated, informed, yes, thank you, informed responses in that light. So I would like to sit down with you, Jeff, to talk about some of that and to get some of that information in the survey. So it's educating people at the same time. Two quick questions that I think you probably have on the top of your list. What did we charge? What did we pay for the chipping this year?
We have not paid for the chipping this year. They haven't billed us. Historically, it's been a $20,000 bill.
Yeah.
Now, what they chip today, they usually were chipping, at the beginning of the season. So this is all of last
Later in the
season
year.
and all of the summer. He was very generous to keep it at the 20 grand. That also doesn't include the barging cost. And, prior to this year, we had two full-time public works employees that spent the entire week of their salary, so two salaries for a full week. Moving, and so, the costs have varied. I mean, I'm happy, I can connect with him and see what would you charge for this load next year if you were to do it? Because I would, I
Absolutely.
fully expect for him to say $40,000, if not more. A couple of years ago, when I figured this out, the cost of the chipping was one thing, but when you added all of the little things, salaries, barging, things like that, it exceeded $30,000 expense of taxpayers' money with no compensation of fees.
Right.
Which is, in cases like this, you always try to, if you're providing a service, you're trying to collect the fees to cover the service that's being provided. In this
Okay.
case, that's definitely not being done.
Good, thank you.
Open it up. Donna, want to say something?
I'm thrilled that you're doing this, because at the end of my term, we were trying to do this. And, I've got an idea for a spin. So the spin would be, in your postcard, we are so pleased that we're being able to reopen the brush dump. Entry will be through the dump, you know, whatever.
Transfer station.
Transfer station. Again, unfortunately, we're no longer able to enter through the town garage.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my one thing. My second is, this is my other pet peeve. I don't know what you have for questions for your survey, but one of them I think should be, are you in favor of your neighbors paying for their own disposal of trees? Because if you say, would you be willing to do it, people aren't gonna wanna pay for their own. But everyone, I mean, I don't wanna pay for Mary's trees. I'll tell you that right now. I don't wanna pay for Eliza James' trees, but I think I should have to pay for my own trees. And the other thing too is, you know, so you gotta put out a carrot there. The carrot would be, you know, like regular brush and leaves, you know, you could go for free. Or you get a $5 thing for brushing that you pay each year or something. But everything else, when you're talking about even 6 inches, that's costing money.
Yeah.
And, you know, anyway, thank you for really addressing this.
Yeah.
And I know, I can tell, I could write a script about the concerns and the comments. So I've already worked on it 40 times. But I think keeping it so it's not just
Yeah.
targeting commercial, you know, looking at it. So anyway,
All right, Mary had her hand up.
she wants me to pay for her.
Yeah.
Same topic, though. This past time that we had multiple trees cut, we were able to line up 3 or 4 different households who were interested in the hardwood. And perhaps if the town office had a list of people who were interested in receiving hardwood. I know Jim Fowler will deliver it anywhere. Says it's no different than delivering it to the dump. We'd rather see it go to someone's wood stoves or burners. So just a suggestion. I felt so much better that it was being used.
Great idea. Thank you. Jeff, and then,
Just one
yeah,
quick item that looking at the big picture of the transfer station, one thing we've mentioned for next year's budget process was for an engineering study. Because if we're bringing all these brush trucks and pickup trucks with branches that stick out to the side and stick over the back through the transfer station that's busy on a Saturday, again, a safety issue. So we're trying to eliminate one safety issue, but we're gonna create another. So I just want everybody to be aware that this isn't gonna solve anything, it's gonna open our eyes to other issues that have to be addressed. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So we need to make a motion and what, Carol?
I just wanna ask Jeff if he has any, I mean, other than the potential complaints, particularly maybe from commercial operators, are there any other concerns you have once we, make this official?
It's education and communication. Once they get educated and it's communicated, that's the best we can do. And I'm willing to try to educate and communicate with anybody that asks.
And would it be helpful to have like a handout that you can have at the transfer station and you can give to people? I mean, I'm just picturing you getting lots of questions and I'm just wondering what would make your job easier, if anything.
$1 million.
See you in Barbados.
This is, you're paying me to do a job, this is part of my job.
Yeah,
So,
okay, that's the answer. So do we need to make a motion?
Yeah, one.
No.
But David has a question.
No, because it's, I mean, it's in
It's in the-
policy. We just need your support to enforce the policy.
Well, I was gonna make a motion, but if it's not necessary, it's not for the $1 million.
Yeah.
But if you don't feel that the motion's necessary.
Yeah.
It's in the
in the
policy,
policy.
it's, we just want you to
You can say the
publicly
board said,
support us in enforcing the policy.
you can say the select board said we have to do this.
Yeah,
That's right. And assign-
Throw us under the trees. There we go. No, I think this is good, and thank you, Jeff,
Yeah, thank you.
for keeping an eye on it, and
I think, well, some people aren't gonna like it. I don't think anyone is gonna be surprised by this change. And I think those that are going to have any kind of feedback were the same people that we involved in this process 3 years ago when we tried having this conversation initially while Donna was on the board. So I don't think that this is gonna be a huge surprise to anybody.
Already, okay, sounds great.
but just to sum it up, all we're doing tonight is doing the closure of the.
Correct.
Of the dump. We're not doing anything.
We're not closing the dump. We're closing access to the brush
Brushed up.
dump and only having it be accessible through North Road during transfer station operating hours.
Due
And
to
we're not
public
doing anything
safety.
about the piece.
Dude,
Nope, that would be a completely different topic, future discussion altogether.
great. 24-100 to discuss Mark Dyer's offer to be a participant with the Yarmouth Joint Standing Committee and take any necessary action. So,
Mark has reached out to the town.
Thank you,
He
Jeff.
played a big role, thank you, Jeff, with, Yarmouth and, Shabig discussions relative to work there. He's also played a role with, in conversations with, DOT, Yarmouth, CTC and, Shabig, standing committee. And so, he has reached out and has offered his services, and his historical background to sit and be a part of the joint standing committee with Yarmouth. He wanted to make sure that it was, appropriate and official and approved, from the entirety of the board. In addition to that, he's, happy to help out with discussions with Chris Mayo relative to DOT, the Blanchard lot specifically. So that's why it is in front of you to have that discussion, to see if you as a board, are okay and support, him, playing a role in those conversations.
great.
and the other person is the other two people on that joint standing committee.
So on the Yarmouth Joint Standing Committee,
Carol and Bob.
is Carol and Richard,
Oh, I'm on?
or,
I thought it was Carol and Bob.
No,
I'm sorry, the Yarmouth Joint Standing
Yeah.
Committee is Carol and Bob, the
Right.
CTC
Yes,
Joint Standing
CTC.
Committee. I need to keep that piece of paper.
And will we be, are there minutes of when they meet? How do we get updated?
We would tell the board
Yeah.
what transpires, and I think probably what's the most urgent issue right now is the sort of engineering study of the Cousins Island Wharf. So we need
Yes.
to meet with the joint, and I think there's a plan to set up a meeting in the near future, I guess.
Yes, I emailed Scott, the Yarmouth Town Manager, and he's reaching out to the two, board members. And I did CC, you and, Bob on that, just to make sure that you saw that conversation when, and if he responded, so.
Yeah, I can't see any reason to.
I think his, his institutional knowledge would be very helpful.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah.
I think in this particular case, a motion would be appropriate to have, yes.
A motion.
And I move to appoint Mark Dyer to the Yarmouth Joint Standing Committee.
Second.
Period.
Second by Carol, any discussion? See none, all those, Donna has. Donna's for it. Okay. All those in favor?
Portsmouth's done.
Thank you, Mark.
This would be the.
Who was the second, Carol?
Carol, yeah.
Yeah, you're lucky to have somebody, as Carol said, an institutional knowledge.
Yes, that's a good one.
Yep.
Alrighty. So, we're down to item number 5, other business. We have other business. Whoops. All right, communications.
Oh God, I did have a couple of different communications that I wanted to mention. One communication was, that, earlier this week, the members, so Carol, Richard, and myself met with the Castines to discuss the, Jenks Road survey, and, to kind of discuss what the next steps were, and that would be really to have an agenda discussion about how to tackle that particular road. The other thing, is, Carol and I just, this afternoon had a meeting relative to the GEI. And we're updated on the work that they've done and, met with, state agencies
Yeah.
about what options could and if available. And so that is something that, will be coming to us, they said by, hopefully in November to then have, as a public discussion. So
And
those are really the two.
And I
things.
would just add that it's challenging for the town, but also for the state agencies, and I think, having worked with DEP for more than 30 years, the right now is really trying to help us. I mean, is within the context of the law. So this is his third, fourth meeting on this issue, and I just am very grateful that he is trying to work with the town.
I think it's really opening their eyes up about the regulations as they exist in the context and how they, what's on paper isn't always, helpful. So, but those were really the two big communications that,
Well, Liza Jane will also be happy to know that we did find the letter that we got a grant from the Department of Economic and Community Development, and part of that grant is to do some work on housing, so. So it's sort of to do the background work to get to roadmap for housing, so I don't, and we may have to kind of look at it and see whether we have to revisit it a bit, because it was from a while back, but anyway, I think some of the issues we discussed at the retreat, this might be a funding source to get some of those done, to hire some people to help us get those things done. So,
Where can I get more information about it?
well, I can send you the grant info, but
Okay.
I think one thing the board, maybe a group of us will want to talk about whether we want to go with what's in there or whether we want to try to negotiate something different.
Great. Wow, thank you.
Yeah, I thought you'd
You
be
just
happy.
made my day.
I thought so.
Alrighty. For communications, the minutes from last, meeting, October 2nd.
Good. They look
Uh,
good.
Have a motion to.
I'd like,
approve.
oh, go ahead. Yep.
Carol, second?
Yep.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All unanimous.
Okay.
All right, items to be placed on, future agenda.
When is our next meeting?
It is not until the first week.
So it's November,
in
right?
November,
I won't
yes.
be here.
So it's gonna be November sixth, so October is a month where we have 5 weeks, and so we have the next 2 weeks. There are no meetings, which is
What
really,
a shame.
What do you think?
Oh,
it's
no.
very helpful for me and what I'll be
You can
doing
still
over
come
the
here if you
next
want.
week. And so November sixth
Okay.
is the next select board meeting.
Very good. Okay, excellent. And yes, David?
Just curious, where we are with the Venice Cove negotiations.
Well, that's what Vika just mentioned. And
Yes.
so I think we should we would have an update for the board at that meeting, most likely.
Oh, good.
That's
Oh,
what I
I'm
was-
gonna miss that.
Even if we don't have the
We'll be on
report, I think we'll have an
Yeah,
update.
yes.
From Japan. Right.
I'll watch it
okay.
from Japan.
That might be a good place to be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So some of the future agenda items, so
Yes.
at the next meeting, there will need to be a discussion, the MOU with the rec center
That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
discussion.
Oh.
There is,
I got
I made a list today and I left it on my desk. But there are,
There's a
there are
lot.
quite a few things. So in SharePoint, I did share with all of you within the last couple of weeks, access to the select board page. But more specifically, there is future agenda items, there is an Excel document, and so Bob and I work off of that document and kind of add and, use that to have that be as our kind of groundwork for an agenda. And then work off of that, and so we have a home run on list there.
And Bob did say we can add to that list if we think
Yes,
of
we
things,
can.
you can put it on the list.
Okay.
Yes, yeah,
Oh, that's.
it's a
good place
very
to
long
do it.
list,
Okay.
No. Excellent.
so,
right.
but the MOU with the rec center, there are a couple of other, I can't think of them right now. But there are a couple other things that will be anticipated, on that agenda.
And
We'll be
Vika,
happy.
I know we were sort of trying to set up a meeting with Chris Mayo. I mean, so we've got on the stone pier, we kind of need to think about the next steps on the stone pier.
Okay,
And so I think we were hoping to get a meeting with Chris Mayo, who is, for those of you, he's the DOT guy in charge of harbors and piers and that sort of thing. And I think he's still in that position. I'm not
you know,
sure.
you say that, I feel like we had this conversation last time, I had reached out to him and didn't hear
I
back.
haven't heard back from either when I reached out, and I wonder if I think he's still in the job, but he may just be swamped. But the bottom line is, we need to kind of talk to him about all our marine infrastructure.
And when will we hear back from the engineering study that looks at Venice and
Well,
Sunset?
they're trying, so basically what they're doing, they got a read from the DEP on.
When you
kind of-
say they,
So the engineering firm and Vika and I met with the state agency today
oh,
to get, sort of to evaluate a couple options, and it was clear that there was really only one that might be suitable. And so I think the next step is for them to try to submit that for a permit application to see what kind of, then see what happens with the DEP. So I think by November, we'll have the information about what that option is, what the design would look like. And then I think the board would decide whether we want to go ahead and submit something. But it doesn't mean, I also, just to emphasize, it doesn't mean we're going to construct something. It just means because I would say it's not a guarantee, it's permittable. That was clear.
Right.
This was the one other option, something other than Bennett's Cove.
No, it's what would something, we're gonna have to take the concrete ramp out in December. And so what are the alternatives for some other kind of improvement that might make it better for vehicles to get on and off? Because other than that, it will be the beach.
On the beach.
But
A
just to
permanent concrete ramp is not
It's
going.
not an
there.
option.
So,
They say that again?
a permanent concrete ramp is not an option. So,
Period. But I will say, because I think Richard and I had this conversation, we have access to barging on Bennett's Cove year round. Doesn't mean it's gonna be fun or easy, we might get stuck in the sand, but we have access to barging. So that, it's not like in December 15th, we can't barge there. I don't know what the conditions will be like, but it's not like the department is saying, no, you can't.
and it was reiterated to us again today that just because the temporary planks have to be removed, barging is not something that they're able to say, no, you can't do. So the barging on the beach can
Can
continue
continue.
as it has before. It's the
Structure.
permanent structure or building of a new structure or improving of anything new or different is where there's the issue. And so they know our time restraints that by December 15th, those plans have to come out. And they're well aware that we are under a lot of pressure to let the community know what work GEI has done and what they have to present to us. And what can the board do moving forward after December 15 relative to barging in general.
Okay,
Good,
yeah,
Thank
that
you.
sounds great, yeah, that sounds good. So we're good for the next agenda? So I guess we're, what?
Budget discussion will be on the next agenda
Budget.
to set the
Oh,
schedule
finally,
for the
yes.
budget. It was supposed to really be on this one, but we pushed it off to the next one, so.
And I think you had mentioned in your email back to me today, at some point, I don't know, at some point we should come up with a system to manage all these grants because there's a lot of them now.
Mhm.
And, I'm doing the reporting on some, but the finances and everything, so we need to come up with a system and maybe somebody else to help with that. I don't know.
Yes, I agree. There's now enough, of the grants out there that I can't remember which one is which, and I'm making mistakes as a result of it, so. I was trying to think of tasks I can occupy myself next week while I'm bedridden. And so this is going to be one that I'm gonna attempt to try to tackle and see how, I'm gonna just create an Excel sheet to see if that could be efficient.
And that's what I've done on the ones I manage, so I
Yeah.
can just send you, because I also have
You
a
did
finance,
send it to me.
but I also have a financial one.
You do, okay, and that's, so I'm gonna try to have that be kind of my primary
Yeah.
thing to tackle, just as a project and see if I'm successful. But yeah, the grants, there's now too many of them, I can't keep track of them, so.
And as a select board member, I feel so uninformed about where they all.
Well, we can put, I think what we can do is, I did send Vika a spreadsheet on the ones that I had applied for anyway, and the ones I was managing, I kind of tried to clarify who was managing what.
Yeah.
So she knew, but then we can share that with the board.
I will say that in the years that I've worked with the town office, this is like really an influx of
Yeah.
grants that I have not seen to this extent before, which is fantastic because that's a lot of free money, but it's now, I feel like to me in an unmanageable state
Yeah.
where I'm struggling to keep track of them, so I need to better organize myself with that part.
But I think we can have a folder that's grants that you'll have access to and you can see them all.
Okay.
And just so you know, the policy is you don't apply for a grant without at least the select board's, you know, knowledge and approval. So you can't just go off and apply for a grant and not
But
everybody.
in a conversation of, you know, can I have your support in doing this? And
Yeah.
then it kind of, you know, happens and then, yeah, it's very easy to forget what's what.
Okay,
Good. Okay, we're all set with that?
yep,
Right, so we will now be adjourning the meeting and moving into executive session. Do I have a motion?
Move to adjourn the meeting, or at least,
Nope.
postpone our meeting, whatever we wanna do.
No, we're not adjourning, we're just-
Session,
What are we doing?
we're just moving to executive.
Moving,
uh,
moving.
He's not
moving
feeling
to,
well. Sounds
executive
terrible.
session under RSA, 60 personnel and committee matters.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Carol seconds. All those in favor? Wait. All in favor?
All right.
Thank you.